My name is Dominic Freschi. I am a customer success director at Openprise. Fun story for me is that I actually was a 2-time customer of the platform. Was one of the early customers building with some of the systems, eventually moved on to another company, brought Openprise in, and then when there was opportunity available, decided to make my way over and try to contribute to the team and work with customers in particular, because I understand where they're coming from. What I want to start with is just a general kind of overview of the platform a bit, who we are, what we do. Then we'll hop into a live demo of some of the kind of core capabilities. And then we're actually going to come back to the slides here to go through some of the kind of AI work that we've enabled for our customers to be able to build within the platform. So for us, obviously, the data quality seems to be a controversial topic so far. Ultimately, it's a piece some folks feel we need to focus on. Others feel that it's an area that we need to move beyond. And we see it as not just that base level definition, right? The technical data quality. Can you trust the data that you're working with? There is, of course, continued work that we do with our customers on these pieces, but we obviously want to try and move up this kind of data pyramid here, right? So are we operating on the data itself? Can we take those timely actions? And then are we making the right decisions? Are we being strategic with what we've been able to generate? And ultimately, this is where we try to help our customers get to, is to work their way up, take care of that base. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? As long as you can build on top of each other, you get to that self-actualization or data actualization. And so we are a no-code, full-stack RevOps data platform. And what that means is that we're working with some core pieces of your data and some pieces that we're bringing into the mix to help enable this platform work for you. So we have things like shared data platforms. We're integrating into most of the data that you have available. We're going to go over later some of the AI work that we're now being able to inject into your current workflows, as well as being able to measure out and showcase what we're providing, how you can iterate, and how you can continually improve based on these data workflows. And it all starts truthfully with the data orchestration, right? Any platform, any piece of this is going to be, how does your data work, and how can you evaluate it? How can you go through it? How can you orchestrate it and understand what's going on and what needs you have? We also can bring into the mix our partner data, so things like we have our multi-vendor enrichment, as well as some of our open data catalogs. So this is going to be freely open data that's unstructured out in the web that we've been able to pull in, process, and make available in a really systemic way to help you analyze and go through. Now, ultimately, you have all of this data. What are you trying to do with it? This is where the process automation side of this comes in. This is where you get into, we're helping you segment, deduplicate, do your lead to account matching, those early stage data quality efforts that do take time and analysis, but ultimately are really the basis, right? The bottom of that ultimate pyramid to build on top of. And then lastly is, what are you trying to do with the data? You're not just building data for data's sake. Ultimately, you need to be able to send this back into your systems. You need to obviously produce some kind of analytics and business intelligence that you can display to teams, as well as if you need to work with certain apps or APIs, we can help you out with that as well. And one of the best features, and that I as a customer always enjoyed of the platform, is the fact that all of this can happen within the platform. We ingest and archive copies of this data, so you can perform these operations. You can make these transformations without editing the data en route, right? It's not just something like a way station. You're really working and understanding what's going on before you do ultimately take that action of sending it out or building out your analytics and business intelligence. And so this is just really the slide that we do like to show ultimately of what do we have available for each of these levels of that pyramid. Right, down from the technical level, you see the cleansing, deduplication, those core efforts to try and make the data ready. You move up into how are you operating with it. It's where you have more the routing efforts, some of the bulk updates, assignment, administration, those kinds of things. And then lastly, all the way up to helping you score accounts, understand who is in your TAM or your ICP, right? Trying to showcase and give you the ability to make those right decisions. So from here, we'll actually hop into a demo, and my one hope is that it didn't sign me out. All right, perfect. This is the landing page of the Openprise platform. Fun fact, that was my idea when I was a customer. I'm still waiting on my royalty checks, Ed. But ultimately, The system is really built on these, what I'll call, they're little building blocks that you can build on top of each other. So at the top level for the automations, you have your bots that are running. These are the pieces that are orders of operations as you go through. It's when things are scheduled, when you're getting that automation piece. Bots are comprised of jobs. Jobs are the programs, the workflows, the steps that you're building out to say, this is what I want to happen with my data. And jobs are comprised of tasks. And we'll go through each of these pieces. But tasks themselves are the individual operations within each of those that you're asking it to do. What we have here is just the available analytics dashboard of what bots are running, success rates, how long they're taking, to give you, when you first sign in, just an overview of what you have. Up at the top here, you'll see the drop-downs. This obviously is how we can navigate much of the system. And under data, we're going to hop into the data sources piece. Now, what I want you to know is that this is not a demo instance. This is actually the corporate instance for Openprise. Ed gave me permission. And what we want to show is that we can connect to really anything you can think of. In truth, we have Google Sheets. We've got CSVs that you can upload. We can do Salesforce, Marketo, Eloqua, Dynamics. A Dynamics integration, I know, a rarity. I'm a long-term Dynamics customer myself. This was a nice touch. But ultimately, what happens is that we do connect into these platforms and ingest a copy of the data. There are ways within, say, Salesforce to filter through what does come in, but ultimately, this is the starting point for everything. This is where we're pulling in the data to start building, to start playing with it and seeing what's possible. Now, we'll get into the workflows in a second, but the next place I actually do want to hop into is data targets, because this was one of the cool things to me when I was building, is that through most of these exports, ultimately, right, we're not just doing a mass export every time of every single thing. There's one target. We're asking you to target each one so that each operation has its own path built to those data sources. Now, what this means is that you're able to keep control of what goes through. Each one has its own permissioning set based on fields, what can be blanked out, all those kinds of things to help make sure that you're in control. In the past, my data security teams have loved that aspect, because I didn't have to ask for just blanket permissions. It allowed me to say, this is exactly what's being sent through. Now, the next piece here is what I had mentioned earlier, we have this kind of open data that's available. Now, you'll see under the data catalog, these are tables that we have available, ultimately that are collections of freely available or slightly obfuscated information that allows us to pull information in. So we've got NICS listings from the most recent publication, postal codes and country states to be able to refer against. We go down to different surnames or different languages that you may need to parse through in your data. So this is all available in the platform to every customer so that it can be referenced. Now, the actual jobs that we're going to be going to are under the automation section. So what you'll see here, I do have, I'm just going to clear these out. So you can see here, for the general user interface, each of these rows across from side to side are the jobs themselves. These are the programs we're asking the system to do, and each of the little rounded rectangles within here are the tasks themselves. So this is the overview, and you can see this is actually our cleanse and normalization task we do for our accounts. If you were to hop into this one here, you can see as we edit the task, everything here is no code. It is a top to bottom graphical user interface that you can use for understanding, programming, and going through your data to build out what you need. And this is where, to me, the real power of this comes from. Something I always enjoyed as a customer was that it allowed me to play around without actually having to update the data in my system. Everything in here is cached as you go through. It is only when you explicitly ask the system to point to your system and export. It's a specific task template. Now, the task templates are basically this is the list of them, and actually I'll go to all here. This is everything, every single task operation that we have available as of today. You can see we even have some beta ones that we're rolling out and working through. But ultimately, this is everything you can perform on your data. And it's really parsed out to be, are you looking to update URLs? We have a specific task for that. Are you looking to help segment information? There's a task for that. The absolute, what I'll say probably most used one of all, or maybe my favorite of them, is the infer task. It's a very complicated VLOOKUP. That's the way I'm going to look at it, is you're asking it to say, here's an ID from one table, here's an ID from another table, or it doesn't have to be IDs. It can be names, emails, and you're asking them to join together. And so as you start to play around with this kind of a system, it allows you to uncover new things you can do with the data as well. And so ultimately, as you can see, the data for each of these will flow through, and then the bot scheduling as the actual automation of, I want this to run at this time, I want it to then send data to here. So that's the general overview of, as you go through the data sources, as you go through with the tasks and operations of the platform. Now, there is one last piece I do want to show here, and just make sure it's, there we are. So we have the ability to also host applications that you can build out within the platform that communicate to some of these bots and jobs. So let's say, for instance, from today's event, someone wanted to say, I want to process folks that attended this. You get into the registration list, but it's got everyone's name, title, and company, but no emails. So you want to load that list into your system. And so through an application like this UI, you'd be able to go up here and load a CSV with that information. I'm going to once again call out that this was my idea. And ultimately what you can do is with that list of information, you can send it into a bot to a series of jobs that process the data, clean it up, deduplicate, can enrich through our multi-vendor enrichment workflow, can then ultimately make decisions based on filters you've set and route the data as you need to. You can send it into your platforms. You can just review it as an export. We have search and edit applications. So it's really that whole holistic process that you can take care of via an application. And I wanted to show you, so that job, or that application, when you load it, it actually drops into this entire workflow. We're going to see there's a number of steps and operations that it's performing on the data, and ultimately routing to where you need it to go. So with that, I'm actually going to now hop back into the presentation. Just make sure I have the right one. Nope, not that one. It's a problem with multi-tabs. OK. So now we are back. Perfect. So how can we inject AI into this overall workflow, right? Now, what the approach that we have made and what we have worked with in our customers is that we can help customers prepare the data to be able to go into these large language models. We can help them iterate through the prompt work. Ed's talked a lot about the prompt engineer that we've brought on board. There'll actually be a QR code at the end that you can use to see some of the handbook that's been put together on how to work through these prompts. But ultimately, through this iteration phase, right, you're working with the data, you're working through the prompts to understand what you're receiving and how you can make those adjustments. And again, you're not sending your data to this location. You're not immediately feeding that into a workflow. You're working with it there in that job. Then lastly, how are you going to use that data? Once you get an output, what are you doing with it? And that's where we can also help take the information from the output, transform it, and utilize it through your platform, based on your needs, your use cases for the information. So we have two ways that we can work with AI systems. The first is that we actually have an embedded model. It's a turnkey, ready-to-use generative AI. Basically, one of those available task templates that was there is just a prompt, and here's the prompt field, here's the response field. And that's where you're starting and working with the data. But you can refer to any attributes, any fields that you've used in this workflow. And you'll see through some of the use case examples how late in the process some of these come. It is not where we're starting. It's a piece of the overall workflow. So it's enhancing what's there and allowing us to build on top of everything. Your data does not leave Openprise. We are not training on your data. Ultimately, I always like the way this was described. It is a system that is intelligent but not knowledgeable. It is not based on the entirety of the internet like the OpenAIs are, but it really is intelligent at what you pointed at. And that's ultimately the approach that we're taking for right now. Now, of course, as we continue to build, this will be available for free during your beta periods, but ultimately things will change as we go forward. The second way that we can connect up, we do have the ability to connect out to the OpenAPI compatible platforms, so OpenAPI, OpenAI, Anthropic, Grok, et cetera. So we can actually help you facilitate calls out to those systems as well, bring the responses in, and again, continue to work with what you receive. So we've got about 3 or 4 use cases that I want to go through, and I do apologize if the screenshots are slightly blurry. I've tried to make them as high quality as I could between the translation between screen to copying to then pasting. We'll see how, and I'll point as best I can. So the first one that we want to go through is what we call champion movers. So as you work with your customers, there's going to be that person that sadly leaves that company and moves on to another. And you want to be apprised of that information. You want to know when that comes through. And so we have a way to try and go through that information, but we've been able to boost it with AI to help us parse out through the information we're receiving in a workflow. So what you can see here is an actual example of, and we do have the Ask AI template on display, but what I want to show here is that this is not the first step, right? We are working through a series of operations prior to that step where we're asking it to go through and clean some information, right? We're calling out, in this case, we're calling out doing some searches to pull information in and analyze it. Now, in this step, you can see the prompt that we've been building over time is to help us clean up some of the names that we may receive from that search result. Now, this is something that you can try and program for a little bit here and there with some search and replace capabilities, things like that. But this is where you want to target the system to say, help me understand the information I'm receiving, right? And try to tag based on that information if it matches to what I know. So for in this instance, from the search result, please provide if the name that you see matches what you would expect to see from what I currently have in the system. And if it's different, let me know. And so what we'll show next is the actual kind of more up-close prompt. Wanted to get that bigger so you can see it. So you can see we're looking out to LinkedIn profiles, email search, and name searches that we've been able to process. And so at the end here, what we're actually getting is you have a copy of the prompt, so you'll always be able to see that by row so you can understand the information that was brought in. Because one of the things you'll see through this prompt is when you see in our system this double bracket and coloring system, that means it's pulling an attribute from the already established workflow. So you're able to just say, target this specific thing I'm asking you to analyze. And that way, when you actually see the prompt, instead of specifically seeing just seeing that copied again, you're seeing what the system injected into that place. So it helps you understand, and that's where that iteration phase comes in. You can see what it had generated and what it's outputting. And then on the right-hand side, there's been some cleanup work here, but you can see ultimately what the response was and what the mover result was in this instance. So here we're able to say, hey, they're still at the company. They might have moved. You might need to check it. Or, yep, confirm mover. They've moved on to a different company. So this can help teams understand how people are moving through and if you need to update your information and what next steps need to be taken. And what I wanted to show you is that this step is not, again, the first step. It's very late in the process, right? So the idea here is that we are doing a lot of preparation work. We are building a lot on top of this, but ultimately this is where we're injecting it to help boost some of the work that we're doing. And so at the end of it, you can see, again, it's not top, it's not the first thing. We are working through this within the process. So how do you fit this in to the workflows? So the next one I want to go through is domain acquisition here. And the idea is you have a number of accounts, records in your database, and you don't have a website. You don't want to go through, and sometimes enrichment obviously really works off of that website field. So how can we help you find that? So ultimately, we are parsing information as we have it, but again, you can see the list of steps that we're going through. This is not all-encompassing, but ultimately, this is trying to find a domain for that company. Now, the actual AI piece that we're asking it to do is, in this case, and Martin, I want to call you out specifically because IBM is the quintessential example of known by one thing, called another at times. So it's always hard to understand which one may be used for these kind of domains. So in this case, we're asking it to go through its knowledge and understand if there is another name it may be known by, the other example, of course, being PG&E. Now, again, in this overall process, what we're doing is we're asking it to pull this information in and then look out into the world and see if it can find a website for that company. Now, again, part of the operationalization phase is that it's happening at a certain stage within the workflow. It is not ultimately the thing. It is part of a workflow to help boost what's possible. The next one, email scraping. So this really goes to one of the best phrases I heard today, which was the purposeful data extraction. That was absolutely apt to me because what we're doing here is we're asking the information from email activities that you have to try and grab some key information out of it. You're taking very unstructured data in some of these threads you may see and be able to pull out specific pieces of information that could be useful to us and how we can use that within the platform. So ultimately here, again, you can see the preparation steps, but I did have the prompt up top. But the one we're going to show here is formatting the information here. So we're asking it to remove email signature, any kind of confidentiality pieces that may come through, right? You're asking it to clean up the information here that you would have to have someone do to be able to understand what is the core concept of this email. So then you give it a destination, and then in the end, what you're able to do, and again, this is the one I do apologize for because this is going to be a bit crazy, is as you go through, what you can see is on the other side, you're getting a description, a breakdown of, or you're not a description yet, but you're getting the actual excerpt, right? The snippet of information from it that says this is what the information is about, right? Or this is the core piece of the email itself, not tied to a signature or any of the to from. This is the core piece of what it is. Now, another piece of this workflow, because one of the cool things we can do as well is we can layer some of these within the workflow, right? So it's not just always one AI action. We're actually, in this case, after, in a later step, we're then taking the signature information, right? So the piece we had actually cut out earlier, we're now asking it to look through and say, out of the signature information, can you pull the individual's information out of that, structure it so that I can look through my system and see, are we in contact with this person beyond maybe them being CC'd in an email? And so what we're able to do here, and this one I did obfuscate, and I actually had started obfuscating one way and then realized there was one little bit left, so apologies for the scrambling here. But what you could see is that we actually were able to, you can see where it pulled out that extracted signature, and through kind of the preparation and the I love how I use this word, and I can't seem to say it correct, operationalization of it, you can go through and then call out, okay, what is the company name if it's provided? What is the first name, the last name, the email? You can pull that information through, and then through our processes again, don't have that second piece, but you can go through and then work through your workflows to say, here's who, if you have them in your system, here's if they're engaged or not. You can go through those secondary steps, but the first things first is you're able to pull out information of potentially new contacts that you need to get in touch with. So the last one I did want to include here is on segmentation, because we've actually seen a number of customers that want an AI system to help them through this workflow. And this one is one where there was some discussions in office, and this is where a lot of the humor kind of came through, in truth, was we were trying to get the system to take a title and provide a job function and job level, and it kept making things up. We asked it to give it a reason, and it kept saying, yes, this person is the chief revenue officer of this company, and their title was revenue. But in the actual piece that it came through, we saw that it said chief revenue officer. It had replaced the title. In the workflow, what we saw is that because we asked it to give a description, and the text was so general, the title was so general, it was making everything up, basically. And so this is where that spillway had to be built in. This is where we had to go through and say, if you don't know, state it. Or if this is just gibberish information, state that as well. We gave it that output, and the accuracy went through the roof. We did also try telling it we were going to drown a basket of kittens if it didn't do it correctly. That one didn't work. I don't think I have that screenshot anymore because I don't want to be reminded of that. But ultimately, and what I also wanted to show in this one too, is the outputs can be changed within this model. So you can ask it, the general is going to be coming through in HTML and how you want to parse that information. And here we're asking it to process the information in JSON so that you can parse that in a different manner. This was all based on guidance from our prompt engineer, and he was able to provide us with a lot of this information and help us with this to build this out for customers. And I want to show you generally what this looks like on the results side as well. So again, you can see the prompt, the initial results, and then also the cleanup of, okay, what is the title that it used for that basis? Again, we have to make sure that it's the same title that we're expecting. And then we have the job level and the reasoning provided. Now, of course, operations like this can be drawn out and really customized to how each individual company has their breakdowns for their job levels, functions, because as you work through this prompt, we can suggest formats, but it's really down to your data and what you're trying to perform and what you're trying to get to, what you're trying to get out of your data. So we have a number of other kind of use cases today, and this is something that as our customers continue to build and come to us with new ideas, right? It's one of the best sources of information for what's possible with a platform like this is what comes from the customers. But other use cases that we've identified and worked towards is translation, especially with Asian languages to English, extracting, again, as you saw, contact data from email signatures, extracting company information from LinkedIn search results, trying to grab specialties, especially in like legal practice areas. Fuzzy matching, right? Oracle and Oracle Japan are going to be hard to match in just any fuzzy system. AI can help you get through that, as well as go through sentiment from transcripts. That's a lot of the, how did this email exchange really go? There's how I'm reading it. How did it really go? And then also going through and identifying potential competitors that maybe you missed on the call out. So this is my ending slide here. We are the RevOps platform. The OP method for AI that I have up here is that we can help you prepare your data. We can help you prompt and QA responses to help iterate through. We can help you operationalize through that and transform and act on the data that you're pulling through. We do have the QR code up for that prompt engineering handbook when it's available, and I'll open it up for any questions that folks have for today. All right, thank you very much.